But we still cut tracks. There's nothing like going and cutting tracks. Dave said it can be anything you want if you cut the song.
All I can say is you better frickin' be good.
Think about it, darling.
I love it when that happens.
There has always been a musical buzz around this town, with so many great musicians who are looking to make it big. It seems just about every restaurant, bar, music venue, and cafe here in Nashville, Tennessee has some kind of live music. Some of the best musical artists, singers, musicians, and songwriters started with humble beginnings, and after cutting their teeth for many years, finally got their big break. From country music to rock and roll, from honky-tonk to bluegrass, there's never a night without great music all over this town. Sit back and enjoy the musical ride. Welcome to Music City, USA.
At one time, Music Row was, basically 16th, 17th, 18th Avenue, right in there, and all the old houses, all the old studios, and there were numerous studios. With the advent of digital, of course, you can have a Pro Tools in your house, so the need for big studios weren't as much. And then Progress moved in. Wesley Rose, my first publisher, always wanted Music Row to be kind of in this area over here. And that's why if you look where he put A-Cup Rose, he put it on Franklin Road, right down the road here. Because he felt like Nashville would crush it. Vanderbilt University was on one side, Belmont was here, Town was here, and sure enough, what actually happened was all the Progress just came in, condos and everything. I moved us over here to Berry Hill, and then I realized a lot of other companies were actually moving here. Peter Frampton's right over here, right across the hill. So it's really, this area has become sort of like Old Music Row was at that time. This area kind of became the demo studio area of town. Demos are getting songs together so you can actually represent the song to an artist or something like that. But now it happens so much in the box with computers and everything, but we still cut tracks. There's nothing like going and cutting tracks. Guys still make a date, get together, and write a song. They may write it for someone else. They may write it with an artist in the room and write it for that artist, and then call some musicians and cut tracks. And that's an amazing time because you've known a lot of these guys for a long time. You know what they do. You hire guys according to what they do and what songs that you're going to take. Kevin Cronin was so amazed because we owned, at one point we owned the REO Speedwagon catalog. We brought Kevin here to redo some of the REO songs, country, because we wanted to try to use them in a different way and pitch them to some country artists. He was amazed at how many songs we were going to do that day. In 2 sessions, we were going to do 10 songs. Truly have some of the greatest musicians. I was going to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I had the chance to move to Nashville for a summer, and it stuck. I've sung thousands and thousands of demos in this town, sung songs that were big hits. I got to sing them first. Great band here in town by the name of the Nashville Cats let me start setting in with them, and they took me under their wing. And my first club gig was the Nashville Palace, and our busboy was Randy Travis. And so we'd let Randy get up in between our sets, and he had to take the little paper hat off and apron, and he and I've talked about this many times, and then plays acoustic guitar. His name was Randy Ray at the time, and the rest is history. And you gotta remember that demo singers at the time were Garth, Travis Tritt, Billy Dean. All those guys were singing demos to try to survive. And then there were some great demo singers. They're guys that you'll never maybe hear of that should have been huge artists. When Urban Cowboy hit, everybody thought that country had sold out and we were all going to be real progressive. And Randy Travis brought traditional country music back in. Music is cyclical. It goes through phases. Every 7 to 10 years, if we're progressive, we go what seems to be a little bit more country with like Lainey Wilson now, and John Pardee, Cody Johnson, picking up where George Strait left off. In the meantime, there are all the other guys that have come in, Florida Georgia Line and other people that have taken it more progressive, so it's never dull. If you look at my career, you get here in 1979, you don't know anybody, you start couch surfing, you get signed to a writing deal on a complete fluke from a guy that stops in and sees you in a bar and sends a note up and says, do you play anything original? We knew 2 songs, I played them, both of them, and I was signed to a writing deal the next week. I met Wesley Rose, who's in the Hall of Fame, who became my mentor in publishing and started out. I was in Mr. Rose's office the day Paul McCartney called him and asked him if he wanted to sell A-Cuff Rose. Rose had some history with the Beatles because he used the Beatles to open for the Everly Brothers when they went to England. Getting in with him, he enabled my first record deal with Mercury Records. He took me to a meeting and I met Frank Jones, who was running the label, and Frank said, well, if you're good enough for Wesley, you're good enough for me. He had never heard me sing a note and signed me to the label on the word of one man, of Wesley Rose. And then that led to me playing on the road to have opened 4 shows myself for Ray Charles back in the day, and to getting to hang with Ray, all the way to Garth Brooks and playing with Garth and opening for Garth. I've done a little bit of everything and everything in between. Actually, I started out more as a writer and then became an artist and then became a plugger and a publisher, and then you move on from that to being a producer and get to work with acts like I got to produce Lee Greenwood and things like that. I mean, I've done a little bit of everything, a little bit of all of it, and then did the road for 14 years. But I value also the change in being able to become involved more with writers and more with songs and exploiting catalogs and running several different companies, because like with Hori Pro, we owned the Kiss catalog, we owned REO Speedwagon, but we also owned Jerry Reed's catalog as well, those classic songs of Jerry Reed. And then we owned Dean Dillon's catalog, and I got to work with Dean when I signed him as a writer, Phil O'Donnell, and all the young writers that have now become great writers in this town, and you're able to sign somebody and develop them. This Kenny Rogers song is a song that our writer now, Wade Kirby, wrote. There's a song called I Can't Unlove You, and I pitched that song to Kenny. Kenny was so good to me, and every time he would cut a record, then after that he would call, or he'd have his band leader call me and say, hey, what have you heard? What have you got that's really, really cool? I remember when I got a call one day, and I went out to a guy's house, and it was Bob Welch that was with Fleetwood Mac. He wanted me to sing some country demos that he'd written. Yeah, and everybody's so close. Everybody knows each other. It's kind of a brotherhood. It's sisterhood. And people have called me all the time. A&R folks call and they'll say, I need this kind of song. And I said, well, I don't have it. But if you call them Pure Music, they got the song you're looking for. And they'll like, Charlie Pride called our old rotary phone, called Curly Putnam that day and said, I need this kind of song. It was Charlie Pride. He said, Charlie, I don't have it, but I'm writing with Dave Kirby. Dave, do you have it? And he goes, yeah, I got this tempo thing called Is Anybody Going? And it wasn't San Antonio tone at the time. And Charlie said, can it be San Antonio? And Dave said, it can be anything you want if you cut the song. And so it had a different city name, but it became Is Anybody Going to San Antonio, which now is a standard. But Curly Putnam wrote arguably the greatest country song in this town, He Stopped Loving Her Today. He also wrote Green Green Grass at Home. His house was also the house that Paul McCartney stayed in when Paul and Linda and the kids and the dogs all came here with Wings, Denny Lane and the guys, and cut the entire Junior's Farm record. You just never know. You never know when what's going to happen in Nashville.
There are so many great places to enjoy in downtown Nashville, right on the banks of the Cumberland River. From the Johnny Cash Museum to the beautiful pedestrian bridge, from the busy Bridgestone Arena to the classical Nashville Symphony Building. Downtown also has the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum that collects, preserves, and interprets country music, where it began and its history for the education and entertainment for many diverse audiences. Within the actual museum, also referred to as the Smithsonian of Country Music, they offer the Taylor Swift Educational Center, a live performance center, the legendary RCA Studio B, and an unrivaled collection with the history of country music. You can view close-up images and stories along with some of the unique attire worn by many of the greats, like Gene Autry and Johnny Cash, to Martina McBride, Reba McEntire, and the Judds. There are also incredible instruments from many country music icons like Hank Williams, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, to Bill Monroe, Mother Maybelle Carter, and Jimmy Rogers. And of course, you can see Elvis Presley's Cadillac with gold-plated trim, and the infamous getaway car from the memorable movie Smokey and the Bandit, featuring Jerry Reed and Burt Reynolds. This museum explores the cultural importance and the enduring beauty of this amazing art form and was chartered by the state of Tennessee in 1964.
All right.
I see the questions in your eyes. I know what's weighing on your mind.
So I guess we wrote I Swear in around 86, and Jerry Williams, God rest his soul, he just passed away, who we worked with for 33 years. He was Marie's keyboard player and arranger, conductor. He was a genius musician. So Gary and I put the acoustic and electric guitars on. Gary put the bass on and sang it, and I sang backgrounds, and that was the demo that I pitched to John Michael 3 times before I finally got him to cut it. The record label in Nashville of Atlantic Records, Rick Blackburn, at the time got a phone call from the head honcho in New York wanting him to try to cross John Michael's version over to adult contemporary, and he wouldn't do it because he didn't want to tick off country radio. So the guys up there said, well, that's cool, but we have this boy band, and David Foster's going to produce it if that's okay. And of course, but I didn't know anything about this until it was already done and coming out. So when Gary and I heard it that day, it was already mastered, it was already released. Very first time they sat us down and played that version, and I don't mean any disrespect to All For One and Jamie and those guys, because I love them to death and we're good friends, but when they first put it on, I thought, oh my God, someone has made a parody of our song. I thought they were messing with me, but man, it was so good. They did such a great job, and of course, David Foster, what can you say? No one's going to produce it better than him, right? Number 1 11 weeks on Billboard's pop chart, and number 1 around the world.
I love it when that happens.
I swear. I can remember in first grade watching the Beatles play on Ed Sullivan. So, I grew up in a very awesome music time, in the 60s, 70s, because you had the British invasion, you had Motown, you had Elvis, you had the Beatles, you had George Jones, Buck Owens, Jim Reeves, Eddie Arnold, and then the Eagles. And actually my first influences were just my dad and everybody playing. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. My dad played guitar and fiddle. My grandmother played 5-string Gibson, master tone banjo, hammer and claw style. So we had a lot of music around the family. I started playing guitar when I was 9. Started playing professionally when I was 12 or 11. Was on the Porter Wagner TV show when I was 14. Of course, my brother and I and Dad and Glenn Brooks, who was like a second father to me. We all had a band called the Ramblin' Ramblers. That's how we started out. I used to open up some shows for the country acts who would come there, like George Jones and Tammy Wynette, Porter Wagner, Dolly Parton, Buck Owens, you name it, they all came there. And then I was in a band called the Country Earth for many years, and we were kind of the hot band in Dayton, Ohio for a while, and came to Nashville. And we played at George Jones Club downstairs at Elmer Fuddpuckers was the name of the place. And I met a guy named Gary Wheatley who actually booked us there. And he said, man, you really need to move to Nashville and you really need to write songs. He said, that's where the money is. I moved down here with my wife, Belinda, in 1981. When I auditioned for Eddie Raven's band. And I played lead guitar for Eddie Raven and co-wrote a bunch of his hits from 81 to 90. And then in 1990, the band split up and I started working with a lady by the name of Marie Osmond, who was quite awesome, and I worked with her for 4 years. And then my buddy Gary Baker and I, who I had met when I was in Eddie Raven's band, he was a founding member and bass player and singer in the group The Shooters, who are from Muscle Shoals. We started writing together, I guess, in 85 or so, and wrote a bunch of songs together. We ended up writing I Swear together, and of course we got an Eddie Raven cut, we got a Shooters cut, but we ended up becoming a duo called Baker and Myers, and we did that for 3 or 4 years after that. Well, I got to Nashville in 81, and it was a different town. Downtown wasn't even safe to go down. Music Row was a small community. It was very tight. It was really more of a brotherhood. It's gotten so much bigger now. I've seen actually Nashville metamorphosized 2 or 3 times since I've been here over the years. Because all the houses up and down Music Row, they were either publishing companies, a small studio, record label, management, booking agencies, all the houses. You can't stop progress, and things change, and the music changes based on young people and how the things they listen to as they're growing up, the kind of music they listen to influences them as songwriters, and so naturally everything's going to change. And the thing of it is that there's a lot of gifted people here. Music Row is what it is today. It was what it was yesterday, and it will continue to grow in whatever it's going to be tomorrow. It was my first single, and to have a song like this as your first single, which was a huge crossover hit, pop and adult contemporary and everything else. And I'll give you a little bit of that. Just you and I, sharing our love together. In October of 81, we got with Tanya Tucker, and we wrote the title song of her first Nashville Arista record called Changes. And we wrote that song, and there was a line in that song that when we were together, it was right, we had it all, you and I. For some reason, you and I stuck out to me, and my wife asked me to write a song for her. Took her to work, picked her up that night, and I'd written the song, played it for her, and she loved it. Anyway, David Malloy, who produced Eddie Rabbit and co-wrote a bunch of Eddie's hits, he said, if you got anything for Eddie, we're gonna be cutting in about 6 months or so, bring it over. And that was before I wrote You and I. After I wrote it, I thought, this might be good for them. So took the song over there, and Eddie Rabbit ended up cutting it, and it wasn't written as a duet. So after they cut it, David called me and said, Frank, we cut your song, You and I. He says, man, it's really awesome. Eddie sang it great, and such a great string section on it, everything's beautiful, but we thought it was too short. Could you write another verse? So when I came to town, I didn't move to town as a songwriter. I moved to town as a guitar player, singer, I was good with melody. And that's kind of what attracted Eddie to my writing, was my melodies, really. And I said, sure, man. I sat down, I guess I wrote about, 3 or 4 more verses to this song, dropped them off to David, and he hated every one of them. But I believe, it's by God's will how things happen and turn out. And Crystal Gale just came over to Elektra Records, and Eddie wanted her to come sing some harmonies on You and I. So while she was in the studio and they were getting levels on her, she was warming up. When that second verse came around, she started answering Eddie. And David heard that, and he had to talk back and said, that's it. And she said, what? I'm just warming up. She said, no, that's it. That's how we're going to do the song. We're going to have Eddie sing the first verse by himself. Then we're going to repeat the first verse, and you're going to answer him. And that's how the whole duet thing happened with Eddie and Crystal. And I always say, and that's not the end of the story, because we hadn't made it yet. I was kind of sucking up to my wife and writing her a song, I didn't write it as a duet, and they took my original line out. So the original tagline went, and now your love is my reward, and I love you even more, and you'll never have to cry, 'cause we'll make it, you and I. As Paul Harvey would say, and now you know the rest of the song.
Over the course of more than 130 years, the Ryman Auditorium has transformed from the downtown Union Gospel Tabernacle to being one of the most revered music venues in the world. This is where it all began. In 1925, Nashville's position of national significance was cemented when radio station WSM chose Ryman Auditorium as the location for its classic Grand Ole Opry radio show. In the 50s and 60s, it became country music's main stage and the birthplace of over a century of modern music. From the greats like Elvis, Johnny Cash, B.B. King, Dolly Parton, and Hank Williams. It is a world-renowned concert hall, rock and roll landmark, and is one of the most celebrated venues in the world. It didn't take long for Ryman Auditorium to become recognized as the Carnegie Hall of the South. The Ryman draws artists and legends from all genres and styles of music, including Kid Rock, Joan Jett, Foo Fighters, Harry Styles, and Billy Strings. Top comedians, authors, political figures, and entertainers from all walks of life have also made history inside these storied walls. And it continues night after night. This beloved Nashville landmark is hallowed ground. The Ryman celebrates all genres, backgrounds, and people on its stage and in every sacred pew. This place is where everyone comes together to experience music, performances, and the best arts from around the world. One of the leading experts and historians of country music, Charles K. Wolfe, once said, "If the Ryman could speak, it could be a textbook for American musical history."